Look, I think that they're quite low, actually. I think if you're a member of Congress, you're going to try to extract everything you can from the opposite party. However, you realize that the political costs and the economic costs are simply just too high. So I don't think that a shutdown will originate from Congress. I think they'll try to find some sort of resolution or extend the deadline beyond Friday. However, I think the big question mark is, what does President Trump do? Because it's not clear that even if these congressional negotiators come to a deal, will he actually sign that into law? And as a result, he still may declare this a national emergency on the southern border.
But then I'm surprised you say that, because I feel like the sort of reason behind not going as far as a shutdown is losing face, which he decided not to push ahead with last time. Would he not be hurt more by declaring a national emergency?
Well, see, I think that he could declare a national emergency, and even if that were contested in the courts and Republicans would push back on that in the Hill, it would allow him to declare victory on that singular issue, which is, of course, very important for him and for his base. At the same time, he would allow the government to stay open. So I think he could do this simultaneously, fund the government, but also declare a national emergency in order to, again, sort of ingratiate himself with his base on this issue.
What's the feeling at Pimco about whether there would be market reaction? Last time it was largely shrugged off, but we were in the middle of this big rebound in January that came from a brutal autumn.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think it's necessarily positive for risk assets. I don't think it would be that much of a negative, because what we've seen, of course, is that the economic kind of adverse effects are quite transitory. However, and a big however, is I think the markets will start extrapolating what does this government shutdown this time around mean for things like the debt ceiling, mean for things like the fiscal cliff. The deadline is October 1st of this year. And those actually could have meaningful impacts both on markets and the economy.
Switching focus to the China negotiations, what's your latest hunch there? Do you think we will avoid at least things getting worse, even if we don't reach a deal soon?
I think that our view is that the president likely wants some sort of political victory on China. However, a big however, the things that the administration is asking for China are pretty big, large structural concessions, right? They really get at sort of the China 2025 industrial policy. So I don't think we believe that a deal necessarily will be resolved by March 1st, but we do think is likely is that we're going to see an avoidance of an escalation. We don't think the president wants that. We don't think the administration wants that. So again, what's more likely here is either an extension or some sort of down payment to a bigger deal, but not necessarily a quick resolution by March 1st.
Do you guys see this as largely priced into the market already?
Well, look, I think that the expectation here, the hope here is that we don't see escalation. I think that if we do see an escalation, that is not necessarily priced in the market, and that will probably
if the tariff rates do go up.
If the tariff rates do go up on March 1st.
As for what China is thinking, or perhaps should be thinking, I guess originally it was thought that President Trump was the worst case scenario for them. He had the bit between his teeth on China. Was clearly going to push hard for a deal. As we're seeing all the Democratic candidates announce, do you think that that's a fair point of view, or do you think this is an issue to take on China and really force for a tough, all-encompassing deal that they should actually try and get a deal closed with the president?
You know, I actually think it's a great point, because President Trump and the Democrats are strange bedfellows on China. If you look back to Senator Schumer or Speaker Pelosi on this issue, they've been really opponents of China in certain terms of what China's been doing with the WTO and trade and what have you for decades. So in some ways, you know, the Democrats, again, are very sympathetic with the president here, and the Democrats are putting pressure on the president to strike a harder deal. So if he does take sort of just a trade deficit deal, doesn't get any real structural concessions, I think you could see a lot of pressure from the left here, and this potentially be a campaign issue in 2020.
Speaking of campaign issues for 2020, what sort of questions are you getting from investors and concerns around all of the Democratic candidates that have stepped forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has definitely captured the imagination. I think people are sort of extrapolating her victory to sort of the 2020 Democratic field. However, of course, she represents a very blue district, and in order to win the general election for the Democrats, you have to win places like Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. So probably we're going to see more of a moderate Democratic candidate ascend, I would think, if the Democrats really were trying to capture those states. But I think from top of mind for our clients is, will we see sort of a paradigm shift like we did with President Trump, right? Will we see sort of an unexpected candidate like we did with President Trump emerge on the left? And, you know, again, it's going to be a very crowded field. Debates start in June, so I think this is going to be a very long slog to 2020.